Happy Women Seeking Wholeness Wednesday, everyone. I'm Cherie Burton. As you know, this is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. I'm going to also add this is also a podcast for men because I know I have male listeners and I love it. Men need the feminine healed in them just as much as we women do. And it's truly a collective wound of the consciousness that we're consciously on this podcast trying to heal. So I want to just mention that I know I have a lot of loyal listeners. I can see the numbers. I can hear from some of you who are private messaging me. What I would love to have happen now as I continue to move into another era of this podcast outreach is to have you leave a review for me on iTunes, if you would be so kind. I know a lot of you are telling me you love it, but you're not publicly doing that, and it really helps me to be more visible as you do so. So here's what I'm going to offer. For any of you willing to leave a review and do so on iTunes, or any of the platforms, but especially iTunes, that's largely where my listenership is coming in, I will send you a free feminine meditation to help you ground yourself, heal, and express your feminine energy. So yeah, just screenshot your review and email me, cherie@cherieburton.com, and I will send you that free meditation. Let's see what we can do to generate more interest, especially as we head into the 100th episode. This is episode 91. But in 9 weeks, we will have our 100th episode, and I have some really cool stuff coming up for that episode. It's going to be very special. So I would love it if you would do that. And I'm bringing in Jasmine Patten again because she has been so instrumental as a personal mentor in helping me with my dark night of the soul. She was one of my midwives in helping me. And I did interview her last year, but it aired on Christmas. And I don't feel like we got the breadth and scope of her true genius and what she brings to the table in terms of like self-nourishment for women and how powerful and pivotal that is. So Jasmine she's just got so much beautiful energy, and you'll feel that as you listen to her episode, but she is a real integral piece of her mystery school, which is a beautiful course / mystery school I took last year. It's 9 months long, and she is a spirited business coach. She does a lot of work with women in intuitive business coaching, but her true genius and what I hired her for as a mentor was devotional self-care. Do your soul path, but also don't do it at the expense of your body and your health and your relationships. So she will gift you 7 divine feminine principles for business. You're going to want to listen to this because they're super practical, high vibe, and things you can start implementing now. Jasmine, my friend and mentor, welcome back.
Thank you, Cherie. Great to be here.
Well, you and I have journeyed together personally for like 9 months, and It culminated a few months ago, 2-3 months ago. And, when I was working with you, I was in the dark night, as you know, like in the thick of it, trying to release programming, trying to find who I am, trying to stay grounded. And my last interview that I did last week with Liana, we talk a lot about how you in the last 2 episodes, actually, with Monica and Liana, we talk a lot about in this podcast about like when you're hurling and feeling alone and thinking you're crazy and you're in that those dark moments, especially when you're in that season of being taught by the divine, you feel crazy. You feel some disconnection and none of your spiritual tools really work. But our mentorship was about devotional self-care, and it's finally clicking with me, like that, the need for that. So just in honor of your presence for me during that time, prompted my asking you to come back, especially because it aired on Christmas, and then like hardly anyone was like listening to podcasts on Christmas. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So now let's move into another area of your genius, aside from devotional self-care, which probably is really married to this topic, which is that spirited business and finding the divine feminine while practicing a business, starting a business, being in a business. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that came to you? Like how it showed up for you to teach?
That's a great question. I haven't really thought about that because I was just living it. I think I was a clothing designer for about 20 years, and I was able to really get into a lot of flow states in my work and in how my customers showed up. And I worked alone, so I was I was just kind of in the zone for a long time. And I just learned to listen to what was being asked of me, what was being called forth from me. And thankfully, there was alignment in how I felt like I wanted to answer that call. Mm-hmm. And I found that when I efforted and when I tried and when it just came from some idea I had that was not connected to what was being asked for, things usually flopped or didn't flow or didn't fly or didn't make money. And then when there was a call that I answered that was also aligned with something that I wanted to give, there was so much ease and flow, and the money was happening and the connections were happening. So I started to notice that efforting and trying and forcing was literally not good for my business on any level, or myself. And I would get frustrated. And then the ease and the magnetism and the flow were where things were opening up for me. So that was, I think, a long time of that lesson really coming to be in how I was doing business. And then that started to shift when my body was literally telling me that, what you're doing, the sewing mostly, was painful. It was hurting. It was not feeling good anymore. And while I still had the inspiration and the creativity and the desire to make new things, my body was just saying, mm-hmm. This is not good for you anymore. And that was hard. I fought it for a while because it was how I identified myself. It was how I made my money. It was where I got my creative flow happening. And it was fun, but it actually wasn't fun when I listened to my body. And I think that piece about listening to our bodies as humans, really, but we're speaking to women right now, is really, really important. If it doesn't feel good, there's something there that we need to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And so I started paying attention to that. And that's when I began to shift my path from being a designer into being a coach and a mentor. And I was just listening to the call inside, what was feeling interesting to me. And I started going down the path of doing training and learning how to really hold space and facilitate for women. And that opened up a whole new path. And I really feel like it was my body that helped bring that to my awareness, because mm-hmm. I may not have listened if it was just like, oh, I'm a little discontented, or, oh, I'm kind of bored or something like that. But my body was just screaming so loudly. I had to listen to her. And now it's opened up this whole other world for me.
So you were trying to make something fit that really wasn't part of your soul path, and you felt this dissonance in your body. And so it didn't feel good. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel right. And you knew it in your body. And I think that embodiment piece is huge when it comes to all this stuff.
Yeah. And, just to speak to the soul path, I feel like that's something that can change and evolve. It was my soul path for 20 or so years, and then it needed to change. Yeah. And so it's not like that wasn't my path at all. It's just, that was it for then. And now there's an evolution happening, and it's my job to listen to that.
Yeah. That it prepared you for the real thing.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So talk about this whole divine feminine aspect to business.
Well, I have outlined 7 principles that I have personally experienced and worked with and witnessed that really speak to that. So what I'll do is, there's 7 of them, just list the principles, and then we can go into it further from there. So the first one is source guidance from within. And I think this is really the foundational principle that is a paradigm shift for a lot of us. It can be really easy to look to the outside. Mm-hmm. to see how should I navigate, what should I do, what's the best thing, and all of that. And this feminine way is about coming from the inside out and really saying that you and only you are the expert on your path. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean you have to know all the things or have it all figured out, but you have access to that expert within, really. Mm-hmm. So source guidance from within.
Love that.
The second one is magnetism. And that's what I was talking about earlier, effort as opposed to flow, making things happen as opposed to really drawing them towards us and letting them meet us where we're at. Mm-hmm. So becoming magnetic as opposed to efforting and leaning outside of that place within. Mm-hmm. Then the third one is nourishment over depletion. And I think this is a really huge one for women.
I had to learn that the hard way.
I think we all
That's the burnout. That's the part where you just burn out.
Yeah. That's adrenal exhaustion. That's illness. That's just being tired all the time. That's never having time for yourself. All of that kind of thing. So in like every aspect of what I do in my work, I aim for, is this nourishing or depleting? And of course, there's always things like, answering emails or dealing with your QuickBooks or whatever those things are that you just kind of have to do that aren't that exciting. Mm-hmm. But the overall picture and the way that you really share your energy on a daily basis, does it give back or does it just take? And as women, we have to be nourished. When we're nourished, oh my gosh, we have so much to give. We're just like these beautiful, juicy fountains of amazingness. So it's very important to even talk about that. Is this nourishing? Do I get something from this that fills me up? Mm-hmm. Then number 4, which I spoke to also, is follow your body wisdom. And how is your body talking to you? What is she saying? Do you feel good? Do you feel pain? What's going on in there? And how can your body direct you more clearly onto your soul path?
When that's often silenced and just in favor of outsourcing to all the demands around us. Mm-hmm. All of these actually fit into that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a theme here for sure. And then number 5 is just the next step. So meaning there's something about coming from this deep feminine place that is very mysterious, that doesn't have this full outline that's XYZ gets you to point A. It's really a sense of trusting. When you're in yourself, you're listening to your body, you're nourished, trusting that maybe all you know is just the next step. Mm-hmm. And then once you do that step, then just the next step will be revealed. Mm-hmm. So
instead of having all the goals and the timeline and the spreadsheets and the plan.
Mm-hmm. And those are helpful.
They are. They give you structure, but at some point it's like,
Yeah. Like, is that really what's being asked for? Is that really what I want to do? Is that really, what will be of best service to the world? So are there ways to just sink into a sense of trust at a deeper level, that it's okay to just know what's next and not what's after that and after that?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Number 6 is rest and do less.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
Productivity is so valued,
Do more, do better, do bigger, right?
Yeah, let's go home or go big or go home, whatever that is.
Yeah. I don't think that was made for women, really. No. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have been working on a class I'm teaching or a design I was making or something on my website that I needed to write. And I would have the idea in my head, not quite sure where I wanted to go with it. And I would either just literally lay on the floor because that's what feels good to my body, or go take a nap. Mm. And then I would wake up or just get the inspiration while laying on the floor of exactly what to do.
Mm.
It's totally counterintuitive and it's awesome. It works.
Just lay there. I like that.
Just lay there and allow it to happen instead of forcing it. So there's this theme, right, of not forcing, finding the flow. Mm. And it doesn't mean get lost in the flow and sleep all the time and just lay around and everything will happen.
Like a couch potato or whatever. It's not.
Yeah, that's not going to work. There's something about when we're able to rest. And I mean, it's been talked about for centuries, really, that inspiration comes when we're not trying on the problem.
So true.
And yeah. But it's back to that piece of trusting. Can we actually get to that place where we can lay down, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and just see what happens?
Mm. I love that so much.
I know you and I have talked about number 7, which is celebrate along the way.
Mm-hmm. And that was a big one for me, because I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah, no, go ahead.
Like, I have a huge achiever in me. Like, every Enneagram test, every personality, every numerology, everything, strengths finder, achiever is always in there. So I know it's part of my basic makeup. Whatever I chose in this life, it was around producing. And I don't want to say excelling, because that feels like a really weird thing to say, but it's like, no, I have a lot that I want to do. I love to work. I'm ambitious. So what I think the biggest part that I was missing was just, I couldn't enjoy what I created because I had to go to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And so that celebration was just not happening. I've been honored at galas and all kinds of things, but it just I never brought it into me. It was all this outward recognition.
Yes. And that comes back to the nourishment piece. Mm-hmm. Can you allow what you've done and the recognition and the celebration of that to be nourishment? Mm-hmm. Instead of just output, actually taking in and drinking it in. And I'm getting the vision of like a line as opposed to a circle. And so we need masculine ways of doing business in order to get things done. And it's not either or, but it's been out of balance, where most of it is in that way. We also need this. So the masculine way of doing business is this line. I have this goal. I have this vision. I'm going to get it done. And then it's done. Point A to point B. Boom. Mm-hmm. The feminine brings in these circular emotions. So celebrating along the way is having that vision, completing it, and then bringing it back into yourself, recognizing it, allowing it to be food for you just because, and also for the next thing. And just like laying on the floor, it's resting. That's more of a circular motion. It's a cycle of output and then rest.
Mm. It's kind of the cycle of creation anyway. Like, if you look at biblical, it's like, and on the 7th day, God rested. Well, if God has to rest,
so do we.
Those are all beautiful. So I'm just going to repeat them. Source guidance from within, magnetism, nourishment versus depletion, follow your body wisdom, just the next step, rest and do less, and celebrate.
Yes.
So putting it into a practical day, and I'm in this practice. So I'm in all this, I see the value of all this. I feel it. Sometimes I can't see how it's going to work with 5 kids and 2 businesses. And so how have you found in a practical way? Give us a day in your life, maybe let's start there, and give us your life station and where you're at, what your situation is. And then maybe move us through a typical day where you're living these principles.
Yeah. Well, in a way that's a hard question to answer because I don't have typical days so much. And so that's part of the flow part, but I don't have kids. So that definitely changes my experience. as to what it would be with 5 kids and 2 businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, first and foremost, having time for yourself where you can check in and ground and start from the inside out. So that might look like, for me, I like to take walks in the morning, or I like to just have, an hour or so where I'm waking up slowly and having my smoothie and still being in that liminal space after sleep, and just tuning into my day, like what needs to happen, where can I take rest,
Mm-hmm.
where do I have a lot of movement. So for me, because we're talking about cycles, right? So every day is not going to look the same. Sometimes there's going to be a lot of motion and movement, and so I just go for it. Like today, I have multiple things, and still I'll build in, where can I take a short little nap in the afternoon? Okay, I think about 3:34. That sounds like good. Other days, it's much more open. So I try to have days where I have lots of things scheduled or nothing scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I like to be either in that go mode or more in the flow mode.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find going back and forth can be a little challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit of a hard question to answer. I work with the seasons, and I work with my menstrual cycle. So when it gets closer to my moon time, I do less. I don't have meetings.
Okay, tell us which moon time, because I know there's the new moon and the full moon. So for some people who aren't into moonology like you and I.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, so it depends. I'm talking about menstrual cycle.
Great. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So
ideally you would be menstruating during the full moon, during the dark moon or the new moon, right?
I mean, yeah, but everyone's body is different, and there's really no right way to be. So I'm careful about saying the best time, because the best time is whenever your body's doing it.
And I'm in menopause. So does that mean I get to choose?
Yeah. So for women who aren't bleeding, the new moon is a really great time for that, because it's dark, it's quiet, it's more internal.
And you're literally shedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So either the new moon or the time when you're bleeding is the time to pull back, be more internal, do less, connect with people less, and really focus on that inner experience.
Mm.
And then the full moon or the ovulation time is a time to be just going for it, connecting with people, having meetings, getting things done, doing exercise. So that more energetic output and connecting output is great to happen at that time.
Mm.
And I find it to be very, very true for myself. And if I go against that, if I have meetings because I can't change them or something when I'm bleeding, it's not that fun.
Yeah. I've literally had really enlightened, at least 2 really people I had scheduled to do meetings with. And one was a podcast and one was something else. And they both messaged me within a few weeks of each other and said, I'm having my moon cycle right now, so I'm not feeling my best. And I really honored that. They canceled or rescheduled. I'm really honored that. And I feel like because I had 2 witnesses show up in such a condensed amount of time, it was a message for me that I don't have to keep pushing when I feel like I'm needing to incubate more and go within, that I can, it's okay to cancel. It's okay to reschedule. Yeah,
exactly. And it's about working with nature and with our body's rhythms as opposed to against them. And I find that there's so much more that can come from that when we're actually aligned. And that's where spirited business really comes from, is alignment with your body and your spirit and your work all together. So there's the moon cycles, and then there's the cycles of a day. I'm not a morning person, so I don't schedule things before a certain time because I'm just not at my best. And I'm not making complete sentences before,
Yeah.
whatever time it is in the morning. Some people might be great in the morning. So what is your cycle? And again, that comes back to sourcing guidance from within. How can you do all that you do that's in support of how you function best in the world?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your peak creativity, if you were in a true moon cycle and that was attuned to your natural rhythm, when we say peak creation, there's a process leading up to it. There's a lot of preparatory work. You have to release in order to restore. You have to release or shed so that you have an open pathway so that you can start to create and then express. So would you say creativity is between full moon and new moon, or between new moon and full moon? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
the full expression comes during the full moon where you're out there and whatever, but when is the creative process most enhanced?
For me, it's more around moon time. Like if I really am able to quiet the outer world and take some time for myself, it feels like this deep cavern of creativity and mystery and otherworldly kind of experiences where things can come through. So it's like the birthing ground of the creative spark that can happen in that kind of womb, so to speak, of quiet and darkness. And then the expression of it gets to come out when I have more energy and I'm more in that outward energy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that incubation time, where you're just going in and you're in more of a dark space of like still point creation, that's when that little spark happens. Mm-hmm. It's like the waxing and waning. And this is something I've just learned in the last year and a half or so, but like, as soon as you go and have a new moon, then you're now waxing after that. You're building, you're in that, build up. So then the full moon happens and then it starts to wane until the next new moon. Mm-hmm. And so by the time that new moon happens again, you're just ready to lie down.
Yep, exactly.
And receive again.
Exactly. And I know that if I do too much, and almost anything is too much on those couple days when I'm bleeding, it's like I get headaches, I get cramps, I don't feel good, I'm cranky, like all of that happens. If I don't, then I don't have all of those symptoms. And I've witnessed that for years. So it's a real clear signal that it's time to chill and take a break. And soon enough, I'll be back on the train again. Yeah,
exactly.
So we talked about...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so we talked about menstrual cycle and moon cycle, the timing of the day. Like, do you love to be up in the morning, up late at night, that type of thing. And then there's also the seasons, that larger cycle. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to answer the question of what does a day look like, but it depends on my moon cycle and the season and the time of day.
To nature, so you don't have this like set schedule.
Right. And I get stuff done and it really works out.
Yeah, well, I am in that lesson. And when I feel into, kind of that living sensually, living in my senses, look at what's before me, noticing. I think that's where for me, that's where the source guidance from within is really activated. That number one principle is when I am noticing and I'm not trying to control it, but I'm just opening my eyes to see what's before me. What can I grab to nourish myself? What feels right? And what have I attracted, which is that magnetism? Like what have I attracted into my space based on what I've put out there that I actually want? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we miss it because we don't notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just stay in tune with the nature and the seasons. And some people are night owls. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? I've heard that it's based around the time of day you were born.
Oh, interesting.
I was born at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, no, that's not when I feel most productive. But at the same time, my higher self sometimes says to me, like, if you trained yourself to get up at that time, you would find peak creativity there and stillness and beauty and everything that you seek. Mm. And I believe that that can be a sacred time. I've heard other people say that's a sacred time. But yeah, what time, do you know what time you were born?
Yeah, 7:35 in the morning, which is often around the time I wake up. Interestingly enough, I'm just not ready to talk to anyone for a couple hours. But it does feel like a kind of a magical time there. But I think that is being a night owl good or not good? Check in with your body. How is your energy feeling? Are you feeling healthy and energetic and strong? And if so, then great. If you're not, then maybe that's something to look at.
Yeah. It really does go back to just like, how does this land in your body? And we just get so used to turning it off, which leads me to the next thing that has been a struggle for me, because for most of my life, because I do have that more of that like achiever paradigm, I'm a giver. I'm always thinking when I take in something new, instead of really letting myself marinate on it for myself and bringing it into my body, my pattern has been, how do I teach this to people? How do I serve my kids with this? How do I bring this into my business? Instead of like, how do I bring this into me and mother me? And how do I take this juicy principle and like let it like embody it? Because that really is what teaches people anyway. It's how your state of being. So if I'm having that shift right now, it's very, very interesting because it's not my typical go-to.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, even though they're quote feminine principles and ideas, we actually have to learn because we've not been taught that. So even though we're women who might be more likely to be in these kinds of energies, who taught us this? Everything around is saying quite the opposite in a lot of ways. So it is something that we have to go towards and study in a sense and cultivate, more like a remembering. Yeah.
Because it's already there anyway. So we just need to open it up. So of these 7, which for you has been maybe where you felt the most resistance in your personal life, that you've really had to make a conscious effort? Effort's not the right word, but maybe focus or emphasis.
I think just the next step. And that's up for me right now. I feel like part of me wants to know what's going to happen and needs to have a plan, and how much income am I going to have, or clients or projects or whatever. And as you know, I'm working with her mystery school. And so that by its own nature invites a lot of mystery and a lot of really listening to what's being asked for and how I can best show up and serve. And this year it's looking different than last year. And there's a part of me that's wanting to figure it out. And the other part of me that is wiser in this way is just saying, you actually don't need to know. You just need to know that like the universe has your back, and the rest will be revealed when it's time. And that's a challenge. I think that's a really big challenge, to really at a deep level trust.
That word is probably I need to get a tattoo or something with that. And I think trust has been just, I think it's misunderstood. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's not like I'm just having this blind trust and not doing anything. It has to be very connected to that first principle of sourcing guidance from within. Trust coupled with deep listening and inspired action is a really great trifecta, I think.
Oh, I love that. Deep listening, inspired action, and trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we're talking about all of these things like magnetism and following your body wisdom and resting and doing less, when it kind of reminds me of just like that inner alignment, that space of just, okay, you could call it groundedness, but it's all about going in. It's all about kind of what I was saying about just how I've always tried to outsource my knowing. Like I would wait to get the word. I would wait to get like validation, I should say, from other people before I would move, when I didn't always trust that I had the answer already. So in this way, and you call it spirited business, you know, and I know alignment has a lot to do with that. So explain the spirited business. It's all these things, right?
It's all these things. Yeah. And it's making sure that what your soul wants and what you're doing in the world are aligned, are the same, are in integrity. Really simply. And there's a lot of ways that we have shoulds. I should be doing this, or the experts say that this is the way to do it, or success looks like this. But there's somewhere in me where that just doesn't feel good, or it doesn't feel right, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's what I should do. That's not alignment. And that's going to be, you know, like one foot on the brake, one foot on the gas kind of experience. So how can we take just both feet and get them on the same pedal, whichever one that needs to be for you at this time?
Yeah. And that feels, I mean, that just lands in a space of, you know, you'll know. You know what to do.
And if you don't know, you can ask your body. I know for me, at the end of my sewing career, not only was my shoulder and my arm and my back just killing me, but also there was this sense when I had, you know, an event planned or someone asked me to do something, or I just get this feeling kind of right in my solar plexus, you know, of just, oh God, no, please no.
Yeah.
And I felt a little nauseous even. And that happens to me. That's one of my signals that something's not right.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Bringing it back to business practice. So you get aligned through these, you know, deep listening, and then you kind of move with the cycles of nature, and you check in inside, and you look seasonally, because even though it might be summer outside, you might be in a winter season in your life, right? So it's not always aligned with nature's actual seasons. But when it comes to, you know, doing business practices, because a lot of our listeners may be feeling called to start a business, or maybe they actually already have one and it's just not flowing. And they just don't understand the balance between maybe like doing versus being. And they're just trying to figure that out as they move into, because there's some things that we have to do, like you said, you know, maybe we have to do spreadsheets, or maybe we have to make phone calls we don't want to, or what have you. How can one just line up the mundane maybe, or the things that are pivotal to doing the business that they don't love, but that it brings them to like, it's they're doing their work that they love, but there's aspects to it that they don't love.
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the first place to start is getting really clear on your vision. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the deep place that it touches in you? Why would you even do this thing? And get really connected to that on a very deep, emotional, real level. Like for me, why I'm doing what I'm doing around coaching is that I have this passion for supporting women to know themselves and speak that truth, because I feel like the world will be a much better and much different place when we can just be honest with what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we're kind of the canaries in the coal mine for our families and for our communities. And when we can get in touch with that and speak that, everything's different. And I get the chills talking about it. So that's very real for me.
Mm.
So getting very connected to your vision and your why as the foundation. And so then when you have to do a spreadsheet, you're like, why am I doing this? Oh, right. Because this thing really matters to me.
Yes. Because you could do almost anything if you're feeling the deep.
Yeah.
And you're seeing really with that vision, like you're seeing where it's going to take you.
Yeah. At least as much as you can see.
Yes. Because sometimes it takes you somewhere more beautiful than you could see when you started.
Yeah. And then there's also the piece of, we don't have to do everything. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do all the things. At some point, can you delegate the things that you really don't like to do so that you can free up your energy to really focus on what you love?
Yeah. That's a great answer. In my business, when I'm mentoring women, and a lot of them are very busy mothers, but they feel such a call to step into really service, but also, finding their niche in it in their own special way. They experience this great shakeup in their environment when they embark on the path. And so then they scale back and go, well, I guess this isn't the right thing to do because my family's out of balance. This is happening, that's happening. And so they say no. And then inevitably they'll come back in 2 or 3 years and say, oh, I'm feeling it again. I really want to do this. And then we have the conversation of, well, you know how all hell in a tornado broke loose when you started doing this? It was to galvanize you into this path as an initiation so that you would continue to say yes, because this is what happens in life. Things don't if you stay in alignment to it and say yes, you can expect some chaos around you, but until the pendulum stops swinging.
Mm-hmm. And if we're talking specifically about entrepreneurship and doing your own thing, besides relationship, there is no greater path of deep personal spiritual development and growth. Like, it is not for the faint of heart. It requires some tenacity and some devotion and some discipline. And it's not always going to be easy. It's probably going to be amazing though, also.
Yes. Just like birth.
Yeah.
Well, Jasmine, are there first of all, tell us how we can find you, and then share any parting wisdom that you feel we haven't maybe addressed.
You can find me at my website, jasminepatten.com. And I am also part of the wonderful program, Her Mystery School, which is at hermysteryschool.com. Yeah, it's all about helping to anchor in how you source guidance from within, basically, and that deep connection to self. So parting wisdom, I think you have everything you need inside to do what you love to do in this world. And you have a lot of wisdom that's actually quite accessible if you just ask yourself.
Truth, preach. I would totally second that. And to add to that beautiful phrasing around, like, you have everything you need, I would add, like, you are what you are seeking, you are that. And so you have everything that you need to execute is kind of a masculine word, but to move you through this difficult, like, there's so many stories of revolutionaries and even biblical figures who are like, no, I don't want to go do that. And God's like, I'm sorry, but this is what your soul is about and for, and why you incarnated. And this is why I put you here. And so you have everything. Yeah. Like you said, you have everything that it takes to stay the course. And when you stay in alignment, I feel like, and maybe you can agree with this, like if you're in alignment, you can navigate anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jasmine. This has been super enlightening and very validating. And I love these 7 principles.
Yeah. Thank you, Cherie. It's wonderful to be able to share them and have this great conversation about it.
So those 7 divine feminine principles for business are source guidance from within, magnetism, nourishment, following your body wisdom, going just to the next step, rest and do less, and then celebrate. So if we can incorporate these principles, not just in business, I mean, this works with anything, a project, a relationship, something you're undertaking that you need that extra guidance with, just trusting that deep listening and realizing that creativity needs to flow. So you have to chill in order for that creativity to really start to flow. You have to be in a healing response versus a stress response. Just want to add again, as I mentioned in the intro, that I am offering a free meditation for feminine power, feminine groundedness, feminine alignment, and flow. If you leave a review for me on one of the podcast platforms, preferably iTunes, screenshot it and then email it to me, Cherie@CherieBurton.com. I will straight away have my assistant send you that meditation that you can download right away and start using. So I would totally appreciate that. And again, I'm always grateful when you listeners share this podcast with your friends who are probably going through some serious transitions right now, probably questioning their worth, questioning what's ahead. And I believe that a lot of the depth we've been able to explore and expound upon in this podcast and in these episodes to date, 91, could be extremely beneficial to those you love and care about. So please share, and I'm so grateful. We will talk to you next time on Women Seeking Wholeness.